Hello everyone, my name is Bea and I welcome you to Curiosity, Creativity and Beyond. As you can see, today we're going to draw the earthworm. I was in the garden and I found these amazing critters on the soil, so I put some on my bug box and I'm going to sketch them before they get tired, and I will put them back in the soil. And I also have, as always, before he runs out of the page, my non-photo blue pencil. Come back there. I have my HB pencil that is slightly harder. I have my 2B pencil. This is the one I'm going to use, and it smudges. It's a little bit softer than the HB. And then we have the 4B. The 4B pencil is darker and it definitely smudges, and I'm going to use these also to create shadows. I also have my ruler just to measure it, and my sharpener and the eraser. So are we ready? So the first thing I'm going to do is try to measure each and one of them. I have 5 earthworms and I'm going to number them 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now that I measured my 5 earthworms, I'm going to safely put them in the back box and just going to keep observing one. The first thing I notice in the earthworm is that they have 2 ends. One is the head end and the other one is the tail end. They don't have eyes, they don't have ears. I know it's the head because it's the leading end. It goes in that direction. The next thing I notice is this area here that is very, very soft. If you notice all these lines, they stop here in this area, and it's called the saddle. Also, CITELLUR. And every single line that you see are called segments or metameres. Earthworms have a digestive system that consists on a long tube that goes from the mouth part all the way until the rear. And they eat compost, they eat leaves, and they break it down into soil. It's very useful for gardeners because they incorporate a lot of nutrients back into the soil. Also, they create burrows, tunnels, so that means that they bring air underneath the soil, and that helps growing vegetables. Mine, this one, was the longest. It was 10 centimeters, but the longest one I have read, you can find it in the tropics, and it can be as long as 10 feet. You're going to be able to see all the photos I was able to take very, very, very close up of the earthworm. And I did that so I didn't have to keep the poor earthworm here under the light for a long time. So in one of the photos that you see, the earthworm has this shape. And again, I'm using my blue pencil just to sketch out the basic shape. Once I have the basic shape, I can now concentrate on the thickness. How thick is the earthworm. According to the photo references and to my observations, both ends are thinner. The head end ended in a thin, pointy end, as well as the tail end. The head tail was leading all the movement. Another part that we found that was interesting was the saddle. It was a part that in the photo reference that I took is approximately here. And it was one part that was clearly distinctive from the rest because it did not have all these rings that the body had. And at this point I'm just making a quick sketch that I can later go with my pencil, my graphite pencil. As you notice in the photo reference, this space is much smaller. I just open up the head tail a little bit so it would be clearer. So another thing that I really find interesting that came out actually quite well in the photo and that I was able to see in real time were all the rings in the body. They were quite uniform. When the earthworm was stretching, the rings flattened out quite a lot. But when the earthworm recoiled, the rings were much more visible. When it recoiled versus when it extended. So maybe I would like to put this information as well in my drawing. Imagine that our earthworm is reaching out, but then finds something and recoils. So I think I would see some rings much more prominent here less marked on the rest of the body. And that's something you can observe if you have earthworms. More detail that we can see in our photo reference is how these rings continue without any major change. I'm going to need to sharpen my pencil a little bit. We are going to be very patient and add as much detail as we can. So one thing I notice in the photo reference as well is as we are advancing towards the tail, the direction of the ring changes a little bit. There's so many fun things I read about the earthworms as I was preparing for these. I have read that the earthworms don't have any lungs and that they breathe through their skin. If you notice what I'm doing, I'm going to do it a little bit larger here. So imagine, I am not just doing these and these. If you want to give it a little bit of volume, you can curve this line. So do you see the difference? This looks like it's around this tube. So you can do each, whatever you prefer. There are so many rings. And as we reach the end, the rings get smaller and smaller. And all these with our blue pencil. Shall we change to the pencil, to the graphite pencil? Now with my 2B pencil, I can make my final drawing, which is almost done with the blue one, and I'm just refining the drawing and making sure that my rings read well, especially these ones here that we found that were more extended and less visible, and then here they came back again to make the ring shape. And if you have observed the worms, you might have seen this behavior. When they encounter some sort of obstacle, they recoil, they go back, and they change direction. This piece that is called the saddle, and that is totally smooth without any rings. And then we continue with our rings. Need to make sure that I keep my thickness consistent, and this is why I made my blueprint. But it doesn't really matter if we this is a change in the direction of the rings in that corner. Now the rings go the other way around, and I can see that in the photo reference that I took, and I was able also to see that in real life. And when sketching tiny bugs, insects, tiny live animals in your bug box, you also have to be very gentle and only keep them for a limited time so you can return them back to nature. Almost done. So now that we're done with our pencil sketch, now we can add the parts. So this was the head end, and it contains the mouth. I cannot see it, but I know it's there. No ears and no eyes. So I can put a note here that says, did you know that earthworms don't have ears nor eyes? No eyes, no ears. This was the tail end, And this part here was called the saddle with two D's, also called the CITELLUM. And each of these portions, as we called before, is called a ring. It has also another name, METAMERE. The food, and I can put an indication with an arrow, the food comes from here into the digestive system. That is just one long tube that ends on the rear. And what the earthworm produces, and I can put an arrow, is soil. And what are the things we can add into our diagram before I start? I very much like to keep this diagram. So I'm going to use my ruler and keep this diagram in which I was explaining how when it's extended we don't see the rings. So I'm going to go over with my graphite pencil so I know for sure that I will include it, and how when it finds an obstacle it recoils and the rings are very visible. So I'm going to add those things in writing. I'm going to give it a number 1 and a number 2. And I'm going to write number 1, the rings are not as visible when it extends its body. And number 2, the rings are very visible when the body contracts. Contracts mean. I would also like to add a title that I'm later gonna color. I like big fonts. Earth. And you can make your own. I'm just making. Earth. Hope I don't misspell it. Earth. Worm. What do you think? Shall I add some color? You can use whatever colors you have available. According to the photo, I noticed the earthworm was kind of pinky, and it also had some areas that were a little bit more orange, light pink, and some areas that were dark. And as we went into the tail end, they were even darker. That's the soil that is been mounting up and is ready to go. I like to start with a very general color, very lightly. so later I can add all the rest of the colors. And you can color it any way you want it. So as we see in our photo reference, there is a part that is more pink, that is here. There's also going to use a little bit of blue. You can create shadows with blue and later paint on top with it. And what I see in the photo is the start part doesn't go all the way into the ring. It's just in the middle until we reach the very end, in which it occupies almost all the ring. And the very, very end, because it has already released some soil, it comes back to being pink again. So as you can see, now I need to add a little bit of red, because it's an overall red. And you can color it any way you want it. Use black. I'm painting black, leaving a tiny space for the highlights. Remember that you can hold a pencil either like this, like this. Sometimes I like to use it like this because I can make thicker lines. And as you can see, by doing this, I'm creating a highlight. I'm going to show you here how I'm doing this, okay? So I'm coloring with black, and I'm leaving a white space. I'm not coloring there, okay? And it's a little bit darker here and lighter there. And I'm doing the same in the next ring and the same in the next ring. So this is what I'm doing here. And if you get tired, you can take a break and come back And when you feel happy with your piece, you can consider it finished. Remember, around here our earthworm has already released the soil, so here is clear again. How about that? If you have a dark purple, you can also use a dark purple. The highlight continues here. And as we go up, we see more pink. And the dark color doesn't go all the way to the ring because all that soil is being formed as it goes into the digestive system. So we can leave, as we can see very well in the photo, some rings are more full than others, but I'm always going to try to leave that highlight. Okay. When we get to the saddle, we don't see any soil being formed. Just know that it's slightly darker, so I'm going to make sure that I do that, maybe with a darker color. I'm going to go back with this red. And then we continue here. There's a part in the photo reference that I don't see a highlight, but then I see it back again here. Then I see just a few bits and pieces of soil. Then The good thing about color pencil is that you can apply one color on top of another and blend these colors together. I would like to paint my arrows. I'm going to paint how the food enters in green, and I would like to paint my food coming out because the soil, maybe this color. Then I'm going to paint my letters in different colors. You can play with how hard you color with the color pencils. I'm using the same color pencil and I get two different colors, one stronger pink and one a lighter pink. Then I'm going to do the exact same thing for these. I could have painted earth in green and warm in pink, or each letter of each color. That is totally up to you. One last thing. This is our worm, the one 10 centimeters. So I'm going to make sure that I reflect that, and I say total length 10 centimeters. So now is your time to have fun. I hope you enjoyed this project, and feel free to take a look at the other photos that I uploaded. Choose your favorite and draw from it. Bye!